I ended up starting working as an escort when I was, I would say, 19,
Wow, young.
and pretty well worked in that industry for the next 15 years.
Wow.
Um, Now, I can't say I had bad experience working in it because I never had exposure to violence there either. I was very fortunate. I went in as an adult. So you hear a lot of people that go in younger when they've been exploited and they've been, they don't really have a chance. And I think those are the some of the women I've worked with over the years. Like I ended up getting my master's in criminology. And so when I moved to Los Angeles, I did a lot of work in the women's prisons and jails, and I did everything from the federal prison to working in Linwood, which is a Los Angeles women's facility.
Wow, that's
The
interesting.
majority of women there, women of color, not disadvantaged, right? Like growing up in poverty and
Mhm.
not really having a whole lot of options. So I'm really passionate about bringing options back.
Welcome to the Fearless Living Podcast.
Welcome to the Fearless Living Podcast. I'm Annie Temple, your host, and today I get to interview one of my friends, Dr. Lauren Casey. We've known each other for many, many moons. And Dr. Lauren Casey has over 25 years' experience working with individuals and their families, providing senior care management and international coaching services. She utilizes a strengths-based approach in her work, recognizing the inherent potential, capabilities, and resiliency of individuals and their families to facilitate recovery and empowerment. Dr. Casey delivers crisis management training at professional organizations worldwide, and she is the recipient of several awards. Dr. Casey is a regularly invited guest speaker at international academic conferences, forums, and events, and has delivered more than 100 presentations worldwide. Wow, that's amazing. So I'm just going to stop here and say welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Annie. It's a privilege to be here.
Yay. So tell my guests about who you are. Tell us about you. Like, who are you?
Well, let me begin by saying I am a dual citizen. So I'm originally from Canada. I lived in Victoria for a few years prior to moving to Los Angeles, and I now live in Palm Springs, California. And who I am, I mean, I've been redefining that over many years, but I would say probably what I love to do is help people wherever they are in their journey of life. And it's not just life coaching per se, it's more targeting specific problems someone may be having, meeting them at the ground up, and really advocating for them. But over and above that, I love to do all kinds of coaching from neurodivergent young people here in Palm Springs to, you know, high level executives and everything in between. So yeah,
And you come from humble roots, don't you?
I do. I was born and raised in Winnipeg. Um, and I've traveled a lot. So over the years I moved around a lot. I lived in Toronto for a while and then I went back to Winnipeg and then I went to Victoria and then LA. So I've been around quite a bit. And my upbringing was very much like middle class, right? In the
Mhm.
suburbs, very vanilla, very, strict. I came from a Christian Science home, so
Oh, wow.
there was no medicine. There was no, I mean, it was just a very unusual upbringing in that regard.
Compared to Western
And
society, for sure.
yeah, but I never actually experienced like violence per se at the level of physical abuse or
Mhm.
sexual assault or any of that. So I was really lucky in that regard. It was more just the controlled,
Mhm.
in a box kind of living.
Mhm.
And once I reached teenage years, you turn 14, I had my first drink, and I suddenly discovered there's a big life out there beyond. And I was attracted to, I've always been an adventurer. So I've always been somebody that takes risks. And in the beginning, they weren't exactly healthy risks,
Hmm.
which ultimately led to, I ended up starting working as an escort when I was, I would say, 19,
Wow, young.
and pretty well worked in that industry for the next 15 years.
Wow.
Um, Now, I can't say I had bad experience working in it because I never had exposure to violence there either. I was very fortunate. I went in as an adult. So you hear a lot of people that go in younger when they've been exploited and they've been, they don't really have a chance. And I think those are some of the women I've worked with over the years. Like I ended up getting my master's in criminology. And so when I moved to Los Angeles, I did a lot of work in the women's prisons and jails, and I did everything from the federal prison to working in Linwood, which is a Los Angeles women's facility.
Wow, that's
The
interesting.
majority of women there, women of color, not disadvantaged, right? Like growing up in poverty and
Mhm.
not really having a whole lot of options. So I'm really passionate about bringing options back and helping people find their passion, as I've been able to do through ultimately getting clean and sober of 23 years this November. That was a
Congratulations.
process. I mean, that was 10 years of in and out and trying. So
Hmm.
my life has been anything but smooth. It's been a lot of challenges, obstacles, facing all kinds of insurmountable challenges over the years. And just, I think it's my Taurus. It's my Taurian nature that when I finally did achieve sobriety, I was able to really work into areas that filled my soul, right? Which is really being there for others who may think, oh my God, where do I begin? Like I'm stuck, and let's face it, I have a colleague, Dawn, who she has the She Recovers network. And I love one of their sayings is everyone's recovering from something,
Yeah.
right? So it doesn't have to be addiction. It doesn't have to be, it can be grief. It can be trauma. It can be PTSD. It can be any number of things that everybody faces.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Something you said there about how getting sober and recovery and being in going in and out of the rooms and that kind of thing
Yeah.
and it's something that I've noticed about the recovery programs that I've been exposed to is that there is a lot of emphasis on getting sober, getting clean and sober, and even on finding out, doing some self-work. But I don't see a lot of emphasis on what comes next. And I feel like that's what's missing. And so people, they get clean, they get sober, and now their life is, of course, dramatically better because they're not fucking it up every
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
But they now they don't know what to do. And and for me at least, I can't just keep doing the same thing over and over.
Yeah.
I can't just like go to meetings every day or and I need, so for me, what I always thought helped people in general and has been huge for me in my life is personal development, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And so getting into books that are personally developing and like learning how to build wealth or how to start your own business and the kinds of things that obviously you were able to accomplish because look at your success now. And when I said humble beginnings earlier, I was meaning like you came from addiction and
Yeah.
sex work. And at least as someone who's still in sex work, I really feel like it can feel scary and overwhelming to break out of that industry.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so to come from those beginnings and have the success that you have, that's very inspiring to me. And I'm sure it's very inspiring to other people who are struggling with addiction or who are
Yeah.
working in the sex industry and want to like, or they're aging out or they want to do something different. They're burnt out or for whatever reason, they don't want to do that work anymore,
Yeah.
So,
And that's typically where I would come in. So it's when somebody is at that place of, okay, I'm ready to look at things differently. I want to start exploring other options. And, for me, I mean, I've been through it all, right? Like I became a workaholic when I was in Victoria. I was working, 3 jobs, sponsoring 10 women and doing full-time PhD coursework. I mean, that's insane, right? Like but it's that need to like just constantly busy, busy, busy. And then I reached and then I hit a wall and then I stepped back and I made a little adjustment, and then I would hit a wall, and then I would step back, and it happens over the years. I mean, it's part of life. It's part of personal development, right?
Yeah.
Where you can find out more about yourself through experience and now. So what I like to do is really work with others who are at that place of, okay, now what? What's next?
Mhm.
And let's try this on. I mean, and when I talked about risky, like being an adventurer, I've always been that way,
Yeah.
jumping out of airplanes, riding motorcycles, like I've done it all. But I'd say today, probably my favorite thing in the world is travel, right? Like I've traveled every continent. I found that through finding out who I am.
Mhm.
you know
Yeah,
like
that's
it used
beautiful.
to be a theory. It used to be, yes, I traveled before, but not to the extent now where I will actually book these experience trips, swimming with belugas in Churchill, Manitoba. I
Wow.
mean, right? So it's finding out what's your passion and what's lacking, and let's just start filling in the void with some new things like you
And
talked about.
yeah, and I think you really hit a very valid point about being a risk taker, and
Hmm.
that it requires taking risks if you want to improve your life. You have to take that risk. Even getting sober is a risk. Will I
Yeah,
be able to do it? Will I be able to handle my life? Will I be able to cope with real life?
yeah,
There's
yeah,
that risk. And then there's the risk of trying to run your own business, or spending a lot of money on a holiday maybe that you feel like, should I do this, or whatever, but taking risks, or, enrolling in a PhD program, like, to me,
oh,
that's a huge
yeah,
risk,
that
and
was,
you did it,
yeah.
woman.
I
Woo!
know. I know. And after I got through it, I thought, why did I do that? It's really academic boot camp, but I'm so glad today, right? And I had a great
Mhm.
team of advisors who, when I was ready to quit, who would say, okay, do you want to be the 95% who decide, I can't do this? Or do you want to be the 5% that actually get through? Well, that's a challenge. So I'm going to take the 5%, right?
No doubt. Well, that is
Because it's
amazing.
uncomfortable. It's learning to be uncomfortable to get to the next level, right?
Absolutely.
It's not easy. And if
It's
it were,
not.
I mean, what would there be for us to talk about, right?
I know. Well, and that's the thing with coaching. The reason people coach, the reason I've started coaching, the reason you're a coach, is because there are so many people who are in the position that we were in before, but are too scared to take those risks, are too scared to make the leap, or to do what
Yeah.
needs to be done. And having someone hold your hand helps you. Like when I hired a business coach,
Hmm.
that amped up my business prospects so dramatically, and it just was everything for me, because
Yeah.
before that, I didn't know what the fuck I was doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Honestly, I was just like, try this, try that, try this, try
Yeah.
that. I don't think that's working. I have no idea how to evaluate it. I'm just like,
Exactly.
you know,
Exactly.
and then
Because
having someone hold your hand basically through the process, and encourage you, and challenge you, and question you, and support you. It's just amazing, I think,
it
So
really is. It really
yeah.
is. And it's necessary. I mean, I certainly didn't do it alone, right? Like I've
Hmm.
had help
And
along the
so
way.
do you coach sex workers specifically?
I do. I do.
Cool.
I'm actually there's a conference coming up, Interface. It's October, I think you're aware of it.
17 to 19. I'm
Yeah,
gonna be
17th to
there.
19th. Yeah. So
I'm
I'm going to
presenting
do a
too.
presentation actually on the digital space and reaching sex workers that way, because let's face it, there's a lot of stigma,
Mhm.
right? the world has a view, or not all of the world, but a lot of people have a view that it's morally wrong, that it's, oh, you poor thing, you resorted to that. That wasn't my experience, right?
Me
Like
neither.
I guess being an adult and being in a position where I could make informed decisions, it actually funded like right up to my master's degree and really gave me the skills that I can use today, right? Like there's a lot of entrepreneurial skills that come with that. And there are a lot of learning people, like learning how people tick, instinctual, right? Like you get it.
Oh yeah.
So what I really want to start doing is helping, like working with sex workers wherever they're at. If they're in the industry still, great. You know what's what's coming up for you? And I think, I want to work with all levels of sex work because I know when I was in the industry, I didn't have anybody. I had
Mhm.
the other women I worked with. We were going to the bar, getting drunk, right? It's like
Mhm.
that was what we did. I mean, big money, big spending,
Yes.
everything was, and before you know it, it's like, wait a minute, I should be a multimillionaire. I'm sitting in a crack
Yeah.
house.
Or like you think about
What's
like,
wrong with this picture?
yeah, how could, yeah,
Right?
yeah. And also like, I now, okay, at this age, I'm 50 now. I look back and think how I could have spent a lot of years focusing on building this business that I'm building now because I
Yeah.
always knew I wanted to be a writer. I always knew I was a natural speaker. I've always been someone that people seek out for coaching, so it's kind of a natural fit. And I could have been working on this years ago, but it took me getting to this age to be able to look back over my life and see how life unfolds, how it
Mm-hmm.
unfolds. And when I was younger, and I think a lot of people who are younger, they don't see how their decisions today are going to affect how their life unfolds tomorrow,
Right.
and
Right.
that's just little habits that you can create to push towards goal and having goals, simply having
Yeah.
goals, you
Yeah.
know.
And having hope, right? Like hope,
Yes.
that's a huge, but I think too, the biggest challenge for me leaving the industry, we'll go there now, because that was very, very, very difficult
Mhm.
to go from making this obscene amount of money, right? Anytime during the day, turn the phone on, here it comes, right? I'm done, phone goes off. That was my life. So when I left the industry, I think the biggest challenge, there were two. One was learning how to actually work for a paycheck. Like what's that? Right? And how to budget and how
Mhm.
to live within a certain means where it's not all this money flying in all the time. But I think the second thing, and harder, more difficult for me, was I had completely lost my entire sense of identity.
Mm.
I had no idea who I was because over the years, I was playing so many roles. I was being so many different people. I was Lana, the escort. So I'm a certain way with clients, but then I've got this other life where, champagne and cocaine. So there's that. And then there's this other life called university. And then I've got my family who doesn't know that I'm working. So it's all of these, I was juggling. I was
Mhm.
essentially all of these things over many years, where when I finally did, hit that, okay, that major wall that actually brought about the change of, sobriety and all of that, I didn't have a clue who I was.
Mhm.
So that, but the cool thing about that is finding out who I am, like taking that void that was Lauren, and it was filled with sex work, drugs, money, men, all of that went away when I stopped. So then I started getting to fill it with other things:
Mhm.
travel, adventure, furthering my education more. All of those things were able to kind of come in and take over. And I think that was the biggest learning curve for me, because it's really tough to get out of the industry. I've got to say that was tougher than actually getting clean.
I've gone out and in, back in, and out and back in, and out and back in for 25 years.
Yeah.
I can
Well,
totally relate.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I'm 61
And it's
now. Like a
culture
six,
shock.
it is
It's culture
because
shock.
you're used to this. It really is. It is acting. It's a lot
Oh
of
yeah.
just, and you got to be good. And it's not about the sex. It's about the mind.
Hmm.
It's about the, getting to know, like having that personal experience too, that so many don't understand who have not done the work.
I actually kind of compare it to like childcare because
Yeah.
with children, it's the same. You have to put on an act all the time that makes them feel comfortable, at ease,
Yes.
safe, loved, cared for. And it's the same kind of like act that you put on with your clients. And I don't know if act is the best word necessarily, but it's just
Yeah.
it's an effort to create an experience for
Well,
people.
yeah,
So
yeah, I
it
mean,
it might still be who your real personality, but it's all with a goal in mind, and you're managing this other person's feelings, emotions, insecurity.
exactly, exactly. And it's really, like you said, giving a good experience and, you know, repeat clientele told me I was doing it well, right? So,
Exactly.
and I mean, it wasn't to me, it wasn't exploitative like a lot of people think.
No, me neither.
Oh, you poor thing. Please don't call me, patronize me, because I know what I was doing and I know that's what molded and shaped me who I am today.
Hmm.
Really.
I mean, for a
Like,
lot of us, the sex industry has been empowering. And I'm
mhm.
I'm one of those people, which is going to be really obvious when people read my memoir, but
Well, mine
uh,
too. We were
and
both writing memoir. I mean, yeah,
yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
and it's just crazy because people do make assumptions, and the most competent, um, interesting, compassionate, intelligent, self-driven people I've ever met have all been sex industry workers.
Mhm.
So the stereotypes are so false because I mean I can say from doing frontline work that street-based sex workers, a lot of them fit the exact profile I just said. It doesn't really matter like where you're working
No,
or you know, and
no, it
it's just
doesn't.
it's a kind of not everyone in the industry is like that for sure, but I feel like it does draw that kind of personality, just like any industry draws certain kinds of personalities.
Of course.
I think like people who
Absolutely.
chose sex work are people who said, I choose not to be poor anymore.
Hmm. I
Or
mean, money is the number one
yeah.
reason, right? Like, that's, I mean, I've worked, as you know, I've done a lot of work across Canada talking to sex workers and really finding out what is like what's missing when you are trying to, maybe get out of the industry and like look at, if you do have an addiction, what's the biggest challenge? And the number one challenge was, I don't want to talk about that in a residential treatment facility,
Mm,
because that to me is, I don't want to out myself, because I don't want to be judged. I don't want it to come up. I don't want the guys to hear it. I need to, and I think that was my challenge too, because traditionally I did get clean and sober and I did start talking about it, but it was very, very, very difficult at first.
hmm.
um
I can so relate to that. I mean, I was in the rooms and I wanted to talk about it. I
yeah.
felt like I I felt like I hated that I had to keep this secret and that my work in the adult entertainment industry would be seen as a symptom of addiction
Hmm.
rather than like the job that I love and that I'm
Yeah.
proud to be doing and that I feel is very rewarding and beneficial to my community.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think that
Absolutely.
that's a barrier for sex workers when they can't talk about it or they're scared to talk about it or because there's just so many elements to that. I think
It
that
is.
that
And
is
then
a
the other
barrier.
thing is, let's talk about the real issues. Like for me, as I told you, it was going from so much money to zero. Like,
Mhm.
you know, talk to any sex worker. Oh, go get a job at McDonald's. It's like, yeah, okay, but how do I make that leap, right? And
Mhm.
just the sense of independence that comes with it
Yes.
too.
Yeah,
You
like
know?
having to be somewhere certain hours that they require, and then
Yeah.
having managers and people like be rude to you and treat you like shit, and customers and stuff. And
It
like
happens. It
when you
happens
run your
in
own
every
business,
industry.
you can be like, I'll never see that customer again. And you can be like, I don't want to work today, or I don't want to work
Yeah.
next week, you know. But when you're working in the square world and for a job, not only do you have no control over your work, but you can get treated really crappy a lot of the time, and you're dependent on that wage. And you know,
Yeah.
it's so hard to put up with that. That was one of my problems, because I don't take rude people very well.
Yeah.
I get rude
Yeah.
right back. I can't help it. It's like a trigger.
You go, Annie.
It's not very stoic of me. I'm really trying to work on
Right.
that.
Me too. Me too. I mean, like I said, it's just an evolution. It's a process. Nothing is
Yeah.
linear,
So
right?
what would you say is the what is the process? Is there a process for a sex worker to go through, or what does a sex worker have to think about when they want to get out of the industry?
Well, I think I think first and foremost, it's important to have some kind of a backup plan. Like,
Mhm.
so if you're thinking of getting out, really think about whether some of the things that you could see doing differently. Like, let's talk about that. What are some of the what lights your fire? What kinds of things do you love to do? And let's explore that. And like I said, a lot of sex workers are natural entrepreneurs.
Mhm.
They're natural sales, right?
Mhm.
Um, and there's so many skills, like transferable skills that come from that. So really, the first step is just getting an idea of what is it that you want to do. What's your next step? What does it look like really
Mhm.
assessing and seeing, right? Maybe slowly getting out, maybe keeping a couple of regulars and then exploring other options, so you're not going from I went from here to here, and I had no I mean, I was scrubbing toilets when I got out of the industry.
Yeah.
So while it was humbling, it was not much fun,
Yeah.
right? So yeah,
But you did it because that's what you needed to do at the
I
time.
did it. I did, and it's the best thing that ever happened to me, because I
Hmm.
was able to literally start fresh and slowly build the life that I have today. And, the life I have today is unlike anything I could have imagined back then, right? Like
Hmm.
back then, it was all about, you know, I mean, there's just so many things that have changed, like things that you can't put a price tag on, like having authentic friends, having real conversations, being able to, you know, just love, trust. I mean, I'm in a relationship with this incredible man that we will have been married for 23 years in January.
Wow.
How did that
Congratulations.
happen? I mean, I was the one, first of all, I got married later, so I was, almost 40. Never had children, opted not to. I just didn't it wasn't in my cards. I was
Hmm.
always traveling, always moving, always, kind of, nomad lifestyle. And then I meet this guy when I'm late 30s, and he's serving 32 years in a California prison. And at the time that I met him, he was doing 20. So
Wow.
this is not a guy I would look at in the past, right? Like,
Mhm.
it was in the past, it was all about, you know, um, money, power, like all of those things, the men that I had in my life. So, here was somebody that, and this is what the memoir is really a big part of it is about, is that's part of my transformation too. Well, I met him, we wrote letters for 10 years, snail
Mhm.
mail, we call it, which is a lost art.
Mhm.
Got to know him. Really, he got to know me. He should have been, if it were Canada, he wouldn't even have been sent away, because it was a break-in, kid from Compton, right? 9 siblings and poverty, and he was, him and his prime partner were going to rob a house, not thinking the man was there. So they ended up going in, and there was a man home. The crime partner got into a fight,
Mhm.
right, with the guy while Ruben was, but he didn't know the guy was there. They left, fist fight, right? But the guy ended up dying. So they
Oh,
were
yeah.
all charged with murder. Murder
Wow.
one. In Canada, that there's no way. But we're talking about California in the 70s,
Hmm.
and he's black, so there was a lot of racism at the time too,
Wow.
and no money, right? So there was no
Hmm.
trial. So off he
Wow.
went when he was 17.
That's crazy.
It is.
Yeah, it is crazy. And I love that you bring up that story without shame because I have a lot of family members that have been in and out of jail, and I've always had a real soft spot for people, convicts, people who are, especially in crimes of poverty crimes,
Mhm.
crimes that, are to try
Yeah,
and,
yeah,
get by financially, that kind of thing.
right.
And then other crimes, of course, that no one gets hurt, like marijuana crimes and,
Yeah,
or where the person's hurting themselves, like, I don't know,
exactly.
so
Exactly. Yeah.
but I feel like a lot of people, when they think of people in jail, their first thought, and maybe their only thought, is that it's a bad person.
Well, that's it.
And
That's it.
that's
I
just
mean,
not true.
let's face it, there are a lot that are, but you know
Yeah.
what? He is the most refined, beautiful human being I've ever met. And it took
Mhm.
us getting to know each other through visits, not conjugal visits either. They don't allow that in California for
Mhm.
lifers. So I became a born again virgin. So do the math, right? I'm an escort. I'm a born again virgin. Now I'm dating a guy that I can't even have sexually. But I did a lot of work on me, and that's what I
Mhm.
needed to do.
Yeah.
And so when he finally was released in 2010, we started really at the beginning. We had a major duo, like 450 square foot apartment in LA, and just that was a slow process,
I
but
know.
it's the best relationship I've ever had, and who
And
knew?
he's lucky he had
No,
you. He's very
no,
lucky he had you,
yeah,
because to have that lifeline while you're doing time like that,
yes,
and then
yes,
someone to help you transition when you come out. I mean,
yeah.
that's
Yeah,
so
and he
beautiful.
he got he got he went to a place too where they specialize in bringing back men who have
Mhm.
served, because that's a life, 32
Yeah.
years is a long time.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I know when guys get out of, or people get out of jail after 2 years,
yeah,
it's a very difficult transition
yeah,
from
yeah,
being institutionalized to trying to live in
yeah,
society.
exactly. So it's really about, he helps men, I help women, and we kind of came together in that way, right? That
Yeah.
we're very interested in being an example for others to show that change is possible, and it's not only possible, it's like incredible,
That's amazing.
because like a lot of people, and he says this, and I love this, he says, some people choose a known hell over an unknown heaven,
Yes.
right?
I
So
love that. I just got
that, and
goosebumps.
that's the fear creeping in.
Hmm.
You have to be really open and willing to do the work, but also to believe in the process and to have faith in the process and getting
Yes,
to
that's a
know
big
someone.
part of it. I know
Yeah.
for myself.
Yeah. Yeah. No, me
Because
too.
it's
I
easy
mean,
to like lose faith, or feel like I want to give up because you just get scared, or you don't think it's going to work, or you have doubts.
I know it's really easy to do that. So,
Something you
anyway,
said, oops, sorry, just banging my microphone around. Something you said kind of triggered something for me. You said that you were like a born again virgin, and you went for a really long time without sex after being, like, obviously a sex worker. And
yes.
I was gonna say, because I feel like being a sex worker, especially like in in-person intimacy provider type
Yeah.
of situation, that you learn how like, sorry, I just realized my tongue is blue from my from
I
something
didn't
I
even
drank.
notice. Oh, you have blueberries,
Oh
right?
God. Anyway, so but I was gonna say, I feel like we learn in this industry that the interpersonal experiences we have are so much more than just sex, and how
Oh, yeah.
sex is such a small part of it that
Oh, yeah.
for us it becomes not even that important,
Yeah.
because it's we actually, especially, we see how big of an emphasis our clients put on it, and but then see that that's not really what they're looking for. They think that's
Right.
what they're looking
No.
for, but what they're looking for is actually someone to laugh at their jokes, find them interesting, find them desirable, uh, uh, build them up,
Yes.
challenge them,
Yes.
like, and be somebody who interacts with them in a connected way,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. And
that's what matters,
that's what matters. That's what matters at the helm of every human experience, right? Like
Yes.
everybody wants to feel heard, validated, listened to, being able to just all of the above, right? And that gets lost. I think that gets
Mhm.
lost a lot today with the digital, like a lot of when you think about the kids today. I there's one
I
example.
agree.
There's a photographer. He's a famous photographer, and I don't know his name, but he did a project. Are you familiar with this? Where
This sounds familiar. I think I might know what you're talking about. Go on.
he went around and he photographed people in different settings. So, like, people having dinner together, people at the park, people walking. And then he removed the phones out of the photographs. And all you could see is that.
Oh my gosh, they all look depressed.
It's chilling. Nobody's talking, nobody's communicating.
I know.
Their heads are down. Like, so that is a powerful, to me, kind of like what's happening. So let's bring back the human component and start having the real conversations and being able to look somebody in the eye, right? Because I mean, I've
Mhm.
been guilty too,
Oh yeah.
scrolling through like social media, whatever, like people, that's the age we're in.
Hmm.
So,
It is totally. I know. I
mhm.
try to make an effort, like when I go out to pick up a coffee or something, and instead of staring at my phone while I'm in line, or try to smile at people, try to say hi to people, just not just for me, or for them, or but just to like have that experience, and maybe bring a little bit of joy into other people's lives, because I know
Yeah,
every time someone does it with me, like gives me a smile or says something to me in public, that a stranger that's just friendly and nice, I always get like a little rise, so
right.
I feel like
Yeah,
I want to do that for other people too.
ex- exactly.
I
Exactly.
remember trying to do that during COVID. I would be like,
Oh man, that was
just
a
trying
crazy
to talk
time.
to people, trying to, like, I rarely went out into public because of the
Well, in
anxiety and
LA,
the
there was almost an all-out brawl in a grocery store there.
yeah.
Like I had to video it because this guy had these big, long, like before people knew what was going on, those dishwashing gloves. And he's in line and he starts yelling at somebody just because somebody bumped him accidentally. And it
Mhm.
became this big scene like, you're supposed to be 10 feet apart. Like he didn't know it was the 6 foot rule. Everything
Yeah,
was new. People were really scared,
I know. I know.
And
And it was just like so hard, and like sometimes people just wouldn't even smile back at me, and I could only tell if like their eyes looked like they were
I
smiling or
know.
not, because you can't see their whole face.
I know. I know. Yeah, we made it through a pandemic. Wow.
And I had a problem during that time, and maybe you can explain this with your education, where I would my brain dehumanized people in masks, so that
Hmm.
the people in masks would become part of the environment.
Yeah.
I wouldn't feel like there's a person there, and I would have
Yeah.
to stop myself and consciously recognize there's a human being right here. There's a human being right here.
Yeah.
I'm standing in line with a human being. It's a human being that's I'm paying for my groceries. Like,
Right. Yeah.
it
It was almost like I looked at it like robots walking around, and the way the signs were in the grocery stores, like the arrows, right? Stay in this lane, stay in that lane. Even the hiking trail I used to do in LA was around a big reservoir, beautiful.
Mhm.
And there were actually signs that you had to walk one way, like people couldn't cross. So all of that became so, yeah, very robotic. in a lot
Hmm.
of ways. So yeah, no, I think that's common. It was just a big change.
I'm
And
so
let's not
glad it's over.
mention the people that were arguing and taking sides with the whole vaccination thing. Like that was, and then the politics. My God, like I remember in 2020, LA was nuts. There were
Hmm.
huge riots. There was the George Floyd
Oh yeah.
incident. There was COVID. People were like burning shit up, and there was all kinds of like rioting going on. And I remember a friend of mine from Canada said, you know, we're sitting above a meth lab. You guys are nuts in America, right?
What meth is
That
going
was
on down
that was
there?
the funniest thing I've ever heard. Canada thinks they're sitting above a meth lab. Anyway,
Mm.
but yeah, it was a charged time.
Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah, so why do masks make people, do you know? Why do masks, what do they do that kind of cause that kind of, I guess because it's just you
They
don't see the face, and
they,
that's how we
they
recognize humanity is by
yeah,
seeing people's faces.
they take away, you know, when we're talking, even talking, right? Like smiling, you can't tell if somebody's really, you can kind of, but
Hmm.
it takes that humanness away,
Hmm.
which it's weird. I mean, a bunch of people wearing masks is not, it's not a common thing,
No.
right? It never used to be.
No. I think the most heartbreaking part of it was the kids for me, but yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so tell me what kind of like coaching, like how does your coaching work? Do you have programs? Do you have classes? Do you have uh like just individual one-on-one, or how do you perform your coaching and your services?
Yeah, my coaching is strictly one on one. Um, and I do that because I like to get to know somebody as that individual, and really that's where I thrive. Like I've done the groups, I've done the program development, I've done all of that in my work.
Hmm.
But I do like to do the one on one and really create a custom plan,
Hmm.
because everybody has their own, you know, values, what they see as important, where they want to go. And I also like to look at, like, let's look at what you've done up till now. There's an
Hmm.
exercise I do with my client and they love it. It's like, let's look at what you've done up till now. And it can be as simple as I gave money to somebody in front of that didn't have money at the till, right? To something big like snorkeling with belugas, for example,
Hmm.
and just get that on paper and just write that in a journal and let's see what that looks like till now. Because a lot of people, when they're in that fear place, it's almost like paralysis, right? Like I'm too scared to even change or even think of, but what looking at the past brings to now, and not the, I mean, these are the things that they can feel proud of, right? And then let's stop there and then we go to the middle of the journal and then let's talk about things you want to do. Like what are,
Hmm.
I don't like the term bucket list, but what are the things that you've always wanted to do that you haven't? And it can be simple, it can be really simple, it doesn't have to be grandiose.
Hmm.
And it's the best thing because from that we can cultivate and pull some really beautiful, um, as I said in the bio, I'm very strengths based, so I look at resilience as a huge asset.
No doubt.
And you know, I'm not interested in, you can go to a therapist if you need to explore like past exploitation or past whatever. That's a therapist's job. I am your coach. I am your, you know, specialist that can help you in this thing called life.
Yes.
And really working in the moment too. Like I, you know, my website, it says, you know, not everyone can wait for 2 weeks to process what's going on, right? And
Hmm.
it can be as simple as, I'll give you an example. I'm working with somebody who lives in New York and she flew to LA for a friend's wedding. So she reached out to me and said, I'm feeling really overwhelmed. I'm in LA. I don't know what to do. I'm kind of freaking out. So I talked to her right then and there. Like it wasn't like, well, let's talk about this next Wednesday at 2 p.m. She
Yeah.
would have been back in New York, right? So
Yeah, I love that.
yeah, so what she realized is I'm overwhelmed because, she used to do a lot of acting and now she's not anymore. But LA was bringing back that whole thing. And then she was getting FOMO and she was like,
Mhm.
ah. But, when we talked it through and just did some doable things that she can do while she's here. So, she called a couple of friends. Like it's simple, right?
What's
But
FOMO?
just that small there. FOMO, fear of missing out.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. She was having that little moment like maybe I should get back into my former career. But she really doesn't want, I mean, she might want to, but at the end of the day, that's really all it was. Is,
Mhm.
and then she checked in again. She's feeling so much better, because when I think for me too, when I'm in a place of fear, I don't move.
Mhm.
I can't
I
make
agree.
decisions sometimes.
And I think like you made a really good point there about the strengths based um your the way you practice your work and how you do that exercise. I love that because I feel like when we're in that state of fear, we forget everything we've ever done
Yeah,
that should remind ourselves of, how strong we've been or what we've accomplished or how good of a person we are or what
exactly.
we've overcome or how we changed from being that kind of not so great person to a much better person or whatever we've done in our
Exactly.
lives that proves that we can keep going and that we can keep getting better. And
Yeah.
and in those fear moments where we think about what we can't do and we focus on uh I'm not good enough. I'm not, who do I think I am? Like why would
Yeah.
anyone
Yeah. Yeah.
give me a chance
Yeah.
or believe in me or why do I think I can accomplish, writing a whole book and becoming a
Yeah.
bestseller
It's
or
the imposter syndrome. I've had it.
imposter syndrome.
When I was doing the PhD, I was like, who do I think I am? What am I doing here? I don't belong here. I
Hmm.
don't have right? Like, and everyone goes through it. And to make that transparent and okay, it's okay. That's a normal thing.
Hmm.
It's
And it's
perfectly
not
normal.
just sex workers who feel that way.
No,
So
no.
I feel like, a lot of us coming from the sex industry or addiction or anything like that, we'll use our past or the way society has judged us as an excuse not to try for something better because we'll internalize it. So we'll be like, no one's going to give a sex worker a chance. No one's going to believe in me. I was an addict, or
Exactly.
whatever. And then we use these things that society has kind of pushed us into this viewpoint and then we use it to sabotage ourselves.
Exactly. Yeah. So so looking at de-sabotaging is a good way to describe the coaching element.
And it happens to
And
everyone, not just
it
sex
does.
workers and
It does. I work with
criminals
I
and
mean, I work with families, I work with sex workers, I work with all kinds of people. And I've been doing it for a long time. I just recently branched onto my own, right? So I did it with a former company. I was overseeing these big cases where there was a lot of crisis management and a lot of, these families who have this incredible wealth. And with wealth comes a lot of problems. I
Mhm.
mean, you can look at this, it's grass is greener, not always. Like I'd rather have a simple life, a roof over my head. I don't need a bunch of stuff, right?
Yeah,
Um, because yeah, there's also a lot of circumstantial stuff that can happen,
yeah.
right? So all walks of life.
And I
That's
feel
the
like
jam.
that's an issue for people and probably one of the reasons why coaching can be so beneficial is because we feel like uh we think that we're special, something about us, and it doesn't matter if we were a sex worker or a criminal or anything else. It could be the housewife, it could be someone who's
Yeah,
had a very normal life, but for whatever reason we just think that we're the special one person that can't do it, the special one
yeah,
person that can't achieve that or can't, overcome this or whatever. And
right.
I know, I think that's a fear, but also I think we tell ourselves that,
Yeah,
and it becomes like an inner mantra, which really sabotages us too.
yeah, we do. We do.
I think it was empowering for me to realize that it's not just me. that
Yeah.
feels that way. It's not just someone who's been a sex worker. It's not just someone
Yeah.
who's grown up poor, and that anyone with any life circumstances can feel that way. And it makes me feel more a part of humanity.
Yes.
Like I'm not
Yes.
different. I'm not deviant. I'm just like everyone else. We're all the same,
Exactly. Exactly. And that's really what it boils down to. We are all the same. We have different experiences, but at the end of the day, we're human, right?
Yeah. This
So,
has been so amazing. I can't believe I just looked at the clock and we were talking so much. I haven't looked. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I should look at the clock.
no, it's been great. You
It's
are an
been almost.
excellent podcaster.
Thank you. I'm trying. They
Yeah.
say that you get your stride at 100. I think this might be like round 15.
Amazing.
Well,
Amazing.
thank you. So how can people get in touch with you, Lauren?
Well, they can always send me an email. They can check my website, which is laurencasey.com, really easy.
And I'll
Or
put that in the
email,
description.
yes, and they can see all the work I do and kind of, where I come from and set up appointments through that. Or they can email me at lauren at laurencasey.com. Really
Nice.
simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you like, do people have certain fears specifically when they're reaching out to you usually that might prevent them, that you want to address anything? Like, for
I
instance,
think
when I'm going to contact someone, I'm always nervous about pricing. Like, do you have that on your website, or do you kind of like just
we
wait for someone to reach out, or?
You know what? We discuss pricing when we reach out because not everybody can afford every price. So I do
Mhm.
work within the realm of where people are at.
That's
So,
great.
and that's important because not everybody can afford. If you can afford it, great. But if you can't, let's work together. That's
Yeah.
my motto. That's why I don't put the prices on the site because I want
Hmm.
to talk to you first and see where you're at and
And you can
what we can
modify
work
how
out.
often you see each other and how
Yeah,
much you
yeah.
do together. And
Exactly.
yeah.
Is it 24/7 coaching or is it once a week or is it just right?
A
So that's
month.
what we find out when I take the first call and just kind of talk more about what I do and how I can help you.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. And is the first call, the consultation, does that cost anything?
Nope,
Really? Okay, interesting.
that's free.
Nice.
First
Okay. Well, I'm
consultation
sure
is
that my
free.
guests are happy to hear that.
Oh, no, this is great.
Yeah. So let's do this again soon, okay?
Let's do. Thank you so much, Annie.
Bye.
Take care.
I'm Annie Temple, the erotic entrepreneur. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you very much.